Now, we want to talk about the PFA. Now, we've been joined by Dawn Astle, daughter of Jeff Astle, who, after a brilliant football career, tragically died after suffering with dementia. And Rachel was Everton's PFA rep when she played there. Steve, Robbie and Chris have also all had many dealings with the PFA. So let's begin by explaining to everyone at home, in case you don't know, what the PFA actually is. It's the official union for footballers in this country. And, of course, Robbie, it's been the subject of considerable debate over the last few weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has. So Ben Perkis, who's been the chairman of the PFA for a year, has called for an independent review of the PFA, which the chief executive, Gordon Taylor, has agreed to. He's recommended to the management committee that Sports Resolutions conduct that process. So I think that's a good thing. He's agreed to it. What do you think, Steve?
No, I totally agree. You know, it's a union that's very good. It does a lot of good stuff. There are some stuff that it can improve on. And I think the review is to see how it can improve. To go in times with society and what comes hand in hand with the issues around professional football players. It's just a case of let's divulge in there. We've seen the funds available. How can we use these to the better, really?
OK, Dawn, explain your dealings with the PFA so far in terms of its relationship with dementia and football.
Yes, well, I can only speak obviously regarding dementia, but I have lost all faith in the organisation, in their ability to protect its members. My dad died. There could be thousands of others of footballers out there who are suffering or have died, and the PFA, the union meant to support them, the union whose entire existence is about player welfare, for me, has completely failed in its duty to understand why this is happening.
And this is to do, in your opinion, the inquest that was found after your father died, wasn't it? That the repeated blows to the head was actually part of the cause of his dementia.
Yes, it was. It was a leading pathologist stood and described how bad my dad's brain was. He said there was trauma all the way through it. And he actually said it looked like the brain of a boxer. So Her Majesty's coroner, obviously having all the evidence at hand, ruled, he actually said Mr Astle's type of dementia is entirely consistent with his occupational exposure, and that was heading footballs. And the ruling was, and it was a landmark ruling at the time, nearly 17 years ago now, and that was industrial disease. So, in other words, his job had killed him. Yeah.
And Chris, you spoke very passionately last week on this show about your father, and they're kind of a similar story to what Dawn's explaining.
Yeah, but the issue is really, you know, it's sickening, and Dawn's absolutely right that there are hundreds of thousands of players who have suffered, who are suffering. The issue all comes down to the testing, and as head of the trade union, Gordon Taylor's role in all that, and his role as head of a trade union is to protect his members and get the best conditions possible over the dementia thing. We can't blame Gordon Taylor for the testing stopping. I said that last week, but he went quiet. He went silent. That is inexcusable. He's never come out and said why. And why is that? You know, what is his reasoning behind that? And for that, how is he still in that position because of that? Has he protected his members in that situation? Has he done the best for his members? And absolutely not. And there are other players. What annoys me as well, you know, the football world has gone silent over this, as it did. And Dawn will tell you, you know, you've been fighting the cause a long time. It's gone quiet. Now, other players, there's not enough support from within the game. If it happens to one of their family members, things might change.
I think as well it's important to remember that obviously this is a massive issue we know for former players, but it's not just about former players. Right. You know, this is about players now. This is about what could be the ticking time bomb. It could be of the future, and that's why, you know, I think all players would, you know, should be looking at this and think, well, why did he do nothing for nearly 12 years? It's all right. I agree, Chris. You know, it wasn't his fault the research stopped after 5 years, but there was no plan B. And basically there was nothing for nearly 12 years. And I don't actually think the research that they conducted answered the questions that need answering. They looked at neurological changes in the brain on 30-odd youngsters in the game. What they should have been looking at is, have we got a problem with our former players in dementia? He couldn't answer that question then, and nearly 17 years after the verdict of my dad, he can't answer that question now. And players are dying, you know, and that's unforgivable.
And can he be trusted further down the line then? If he did it once and didn't want to come out and answer the question, what faith do we really have in him further down? He needs to step down.
Well, we must say, Chris, we did invite the PFA to come onto the programme, but they politely declined, so we give them to have
and that sums it up, doesn't it? They could come on, you know, they represent the Players' Union, they could have their say, they don't want to. Why?
Well, they declined to respond on that one. Rachel, with regards to the women's game, let's move this along. I think there will be a lot of people watching this that are actually not even sure that women are represented by the PFA. So are they?
Yes, they are. So with how the women's game's moved on, when we first got central contracts, which was about 10, 12 years ago, it was the first time that we were invited to become members of the PFA. Before that, Fulham ladies became professional for a couple of years, and at that time, they were sort of the anomaly. But after that, central contracted players for England were invited to become PFA members. Since then, WSL Women's Super League players are also invited to become PFA members. So yes, they are, but only very, very top league, which is the professional league, which, you know, puts it as a sort of the equality to the men's.
Does it surprise you when you hear stories like Chris's and Dawn's here, considering that you've actually had a really positive experience with the PFA?
It doesn't surprise me, no, because I've seen what happened initially with the NFL and sort of a similar, you know, the concussion debate that happened in the NFL. You know, they sort of dismissed it for a long time until they kind of got pressurised into doing proper research. It costs money, but that's not by any means any excuse to not do the research, because not only are you looking after the former players who are currently suffering from dementia in this case, you're looking to prevent this happening in the future. But as far as going back to some of the positive experiences that I've had and we've had as the women's players it's only a recent addition that we've been able to become PFA members. A lot of our players don't earn a lot of money during their careers, and so the work that the PFA does beyond playing football has been really, really important to us having careers beyond that. Media degrees, physio degrees, the education prospects that they can offer you, the financial assistance that they can offer you during your playing careers, the rehab facilities at St George's Park they can offer you. I think because of the, you know, people may not know that women's players don't generally earn a lot of money, that these assistances are very, very huge and life-changing to us as women's players, like I said, who don't earn much money.
Do you trust Gordon Taylor as your union boss?
My only experiences with him is that he's had a very open ear. He's been willing to listen to us as far as what the women's game is like, the resources that we have or we don't have, because it's not a direct parallel. So from my own experiences as a player and now as a former player, I have no reason to distrust him. But
well, you've just heard the dementia debate,
yeah,
and you've sat and listened to that. So what's your feeling on that now?
Yeah, it certainly, for me, doesn't quite smell right. When you've got someone who says, yeah, let's go and investigate that, and then suddenly goes quiet. Why?
So obviously you've just retired, Steve, and you know we read stuff in the press about former footballers, you know, some facing homelessness, you know, they've been financially exploited. Yeah. So do you think the PFA has lost touch with, you know, the requirements of modern issues facing its members, such as, you know, dementia, mental health, financial exploitation?
Yeah, no, 100%. Listen, I can speak for, especially as a Premier League football player, the amount of meetings that you have with equality, discrimination, racism, all at the leading light of what should be pushed forward on a global brand that is the Premier League and football that goes worldwide, pushed at 100%. But I found there was not enough meetings about bankruptcy, divorce, mental health, alcoholism, drug abuse, all comes hand in hand. Footballers nowadays are seen as celebrities, superstars, the amount of money that gets mixed in with that as well. There's loads of surroundings that go with that, and you don't get that advice throughout your career or after either.
So how do you think, Steve, that the PFA should go about prioritising what is the most important thing they need to help players with? Because that's obviously a difficult task.
It's very difficult. I think they need to be proactive. Listen, there's got to be a responsibility and an accountability on the football side, on the footballers or the individual as well. You know, it can't just be all hand-fed. Footballers are hand-fed everything throughout their career. They need advice, yes, but they obviously need to step up and say they need help as well. it's a very much a bravado sport, isn't it? It's a very ego sport where fear and failure is not welcome hand in hand. So you have to hold your hand up sometimes and admit that you need help, but sometimes you need to be pushing that direction, and that could be a text, an email, a phone call from the PFA.
So if you could implement one change now, right now, for the PFA, what would it be?
That would be for Gordon Taylor to go. There's a reason why Ben Purkis, called him out. I mean, Ben Purkis has worked inside the organisation, and he wants it to function properly. Now, Gordon Taylor could have nipped everything in the bud by saying, "I tell you what, let's just have an election," and if he had the backing of his union members, then they'd vote him in. Why hasn't he done that?
Dawn, what about you? One change.
I'm the same. I genuinely think he really has to go. I think there needs to be somebody in charge of what could be a fantastic organisation for the players, who really understands not just the issues that are so important for the modern player, but also former players. Absolutely.